Oh, it was only later I realized that uh, he's talking about emptiness here. This is, I mean, and what I saw myself, and I didn't make the connection right away. So in other words, you can't get there intellectually. So by thinking, trying to figure out what this word means, any of these things that you might ask, it's okay to ask the question, but I wouldn't go seeking. That's that thing about Buddhists don't seek. I wouldn't go seeking an answer, because whatever you come up with will just be another piece of intellection. You're just going to put together another idea. And I can guarantee it, the very fact that it is an idea is right. It might be functional, it might be a functional and useful idea in some way, but in terms of truth, it's wrong. It doesn't capture the truth. It doesn't capture reality. And it won't grant you the kind of understanding that would be there if you had a full realization of what the direct experience is. That's awakening. So it's a different thing altogether. It is not an intellectual thing. It won't form as an idea or a thought. That's why the awakened, they can't tell us what it is to see. They're, it isn't something like that at all. Whatever they might describe, well, we'll end up making something in our mind, an object of some sort. And then we'll think we've captured it. So it's one thing to have these questions. I certainly had them, but I started giving up on ever looking for answers. And at some point, the whole thing will just kind of sneak up behind you when you're not looking and overtake you, and then it'll be there. Or you might be kind of stupid like me and take a while before you realize, oh, gee, this is what Nagarjuna is talking about. I was a little slow on that point, but that's what you need to do. So don't grasp anything. But again, having the question and entertaining the question, that's fine. That's actually maybe even helpful. But it's when we go seeking that we go wrong. And it's enough to have the question. The response, the proper opening, enlightening response to the question will just come of its own. You can't force it, because if anything you force is part of the delusion that you're suffering from the beginning. So don't worry about that part of it. So if the question is there, that's fine. Just sit with the question. Okay. I hope that's okay, Tracy. Yeah, thank you.
So how do you, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Anne, I think you start. I don't know who was first, so Nico, I'll get to you then too. But Anne, if you have a.
That's fine. Go ahead.
So what is the value of reading and doing things with your intellect around Zen? Knowing that's not going to.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of like preparing the ground, and making the ground ready to receive, the nourishing rains, and then the seed and whatever else might go into something sprouting there. So it's just sort of preparing the ground. It's helpful in that way. It was certainly helpful for me. And then also meeting someone like Katagiri, who really straightened me out on a lot of misguided ideas I had at the beginning. And so it is helpful in that way, but it's not helpful in the way that we normally would think. Like, I will read this book, I will take up this study because I want to learn these ideas. I want to get this kind of know-how or whatever. And that's very functional and useful, and we should do things like that. But when it comes to Dharma teaching, don't try to grasp anything. Suzuki Roshi, if you might be familiar with him in his book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He says right at the beginning, he said when I think it's near the beginning. Well, it's somewhere in there anyway. But he says, when my talk is over, your listening is over. There's no need to remember what I said. And I remember when I first read that, I thought, what? Well, what's the point of of even reading what you said or listening to you. If you finish and then I don't have to remember. So it's just so different from our normal way. But it is helpful to hear that. I remember when I first heard Katagiri Roshi speak, I'd never heard anybody talk that way before in my life. It was just jaw dropping for me. And I remember early on, I learned a lesson though. I dragged my brother to come and hear him, and my brother afterward, he didn't hear anything. It was just just this funny Japanese guy, and you could barely make out what he was saying, from the accent or whatever. For some reason, I didn't have trouble with his accent, but I'd never heard people. Well, what I heard was actually I had been studying Nagarjuna, and I heard Nagarjuna coming from him, and with that kind of understanding, and I thought I've met my teacher here, because I'd been looking for some years before that, and so it is helpful to run into these kinds of teachings and to read. If you can read the great teachings, and those are generally the ones that come down from the past that are still with us, because the superficial teachings and things like this, they tend to fall away. So I'd be very careful of contemporary writings, and I'm saying that even as a, a writer myself. Just be careful. I try to give you the straight thing as best I can, but still, it hasn't seen the test of time yet. But some of the great teachers from the past, Wang Po is another one, Dogen, of course, and Nagarjuna and others. But these things are helpful for us. But again, don't try to figure it out. Just read them. You have a question, that's good. The question is good. There it is. It's been planted in your mind now. Just sit with that, stay with it. But don't go trying to find an answer or putting it together. Okay, so this must mean, I just wouldn't do that. So, but it is helpful, very helpful. Kind of tills the ground for us. Yeah, makes it ready. So thank
So
you.
we have time for one more question.
Yeah, Nico, I think yeah.
Actually, I think you've answered it for the most part. Our question was about the difference between the usefulness of the useful intellect and grasping. But I think you've addressed that for the most part.
Oh, good. Yes. Yeah, because that is an important point, that our conceptualizing minds are useful. They're functional. They're, but they can't grasp truth. And so anything they come up with, treat that very gingerly. Don't hang on to it. The truth will come to you in a kind of a wordless sort of way, and just where you just see it, and you won't be able to. It actually is. I'm using another analogy for this. It's like drinking orange juice. If you had never tasted orange juice in your life, you had never seen an orange or anything, and I'm describing, I just tasted this wonderful juice, this beverage, orange juice, and then you want me to describe it to you, so I can describe it, and maybe if I was a great poet or something, I could put it into elegant words and very moving and all this to anybody who might have tasted orange juice. But for you, I would not be able to put the words together, no matter how eloquent I might be, that would give you the taste of orange juice. You have to experience, and you do experience, that's the beautiful thing too. We do experience reality directly all the time. In fact, it is all we ever experience. We just obscure it as far as our take on it is concerned, because of our conceptualizing, because of our thinking and grasping and manufacturing answers and stuff like this. And so if we just kind of back off on that, interpreting all this and then just taste the orange juice, so to speak, just taste reality, because we are having the experience of it. And so again, that's why as soon as you put it into a form, but like Foyan says here, as soon as you drive a stake into the ground, you're not going to get anywhere with this. You're going to be just staying where you are, even though all the while you're still moving around, but you could be doing this journey. But then the enlightenment and the awakening is in the journey itself, and not in a goal at the end. And that journey you're on, even around now, as we all sit here we are. We're having a full experience of reality right from the start. So I don't know if, well, I guess you got the hang of that anyway, Nico. So, but thank you for the question. And I guess I've used up the hour here, haven't I? So do I turn this back to you, Tejo?
Yeah, we'll give back the merit. Steve, if you can, if you want it, if you have time to stay on and,
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but we'll give back the merit for those people who have to leave. This is call and response, but everybody, if you're going to respond, keep yourself muted because otherwise it gets all wonky.
Okay.
May the merit of this practice benefit all beings and bring peace. Thank you so much, Steve. And if you can stay on and answer questions, that would be great. If
Sure, I can stay for a little while.
okay, so if anybody wants to stay and ask any more questions or have any more discussion, here we are.
Okay. And if you don't have any questions, that's fine too. You won't hurt my feelings. So.
Oh, well, I did have another kind of follow-up question
Sure.
to that then. As we all experience this, as we all have perhaps an independent potentiality to awaken to it, can I ask what perhaps a bit of a personal question, but can I ask what the appeal of a monastic life then is, or of a student's life?
Yeah, to immerse yourself in a kind of settled life. If you can get away from the busyness, it's just simply what Dogen, and again in Fukan Zazengi, where he says a quiet room is suitable. He doesn't say a quiet room is required. You give up if you can't find a quiet room. But this is suitable. It's appropriate, for this sort of thing. Same thing then, if to the extent that you can take this up and live in a kind of a settled life in a way, that'd be very functional and useful for you. Of course, you also get a lot of training and that sort of thing in the ceremony and things of this sort. I remember when Katagiri sent me over to Japan and Tejo as well and others got a lot of extra training there. I fell ill and I wasn't able to stay there for too long, but I did get some. And but that sort of thing maybe is helpful, in some ways, but the actual benefit to this is to the extent that we can settle down and make our minds quiet and settled. This would be very helpful to do this in our daily life. Like here, I live in a metropolitan area here. What do we have? 2.5, 3 million here, I think, in the Twin Cities or something. It's a busy place, noisy place, and I often like to go up to that country you see behind me there. That's my home country, where it's very quiet and clean and all of that. But can't always do that. I'm going to take off in a few days here, actually, to go back up there. I haven't been up there since before the COVID season. But anyway, these things are, would be helpful to the extent that you can find that. Even to introduce that into your daily practice. You have a center there and you can come and sit and be quiet and settled. Or during this time of COVID, we haven't had our center open yet. It's still closed. It's just right next door to me here. And people are really itching to open that up and get back. And I'd like to see it open too, but I've stepped down now as the head here, so I don't have to make these decisions anymore. But but at the same time, I wouldn't crave something like that either. Like with people who really want to get back, and sometimes people have gotten kind of emotional about it because we haven't opened it yet and things like this. Well, the point is, look at your mind. Even right now, you're getting upset. You're getting agitated. So you can practice this at any point, but you have to do it. And you have to start to recognize what it is you're doing and when you're getting caught, and this sort of thing. So all of this is very helpful, and putting yourself in kind of a monastic setting where everything is just kind of focused, and where even then the practice becomes the ritual that you do in the ceremony and that sort of thing. But again, watch your mind. I wouldn't make anything special out of it. If you do, then you're kind of missing the point. But the point is to find a way to live where you can keep yourself settled no matter what comes at you, and all sorts of things might be coming at us. I mean, with the collapse of the environment in all kinds of ways, and politically things are, we're ready to tear ourselves apart here in many ways. And so we could be facing any number of things soon enough. Well, we already are. But in the midst of all of this, we can still just settle the mind, even if we have to go into a noisy place and a crazy place where everyone around us is crazy and angry, and you yourself, you don't have to get caught up in that. You can't avoid it. I don't mean to bury our heads in the sand or anything like that at all. I mean, no, face this directly, but we don't need to be caught up in the things that make us angry and resentful and all of that. If we're interested in living out of awakeness, out of enlightenment, then you have to watch your mind. And little by little, we can learn to do this. I don't know anybody who does it perfectly. I certainly can't. But I've been at this now more than 50 years, and it's getting a little easier. I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Maybe the real test is still in front of me. We'll see. I don't know. But yeah. So, but I would say I would view monastic practice in that way, that in just finding a way to kind of help you to learn to settle down, and then gradually bring yourself back into the noisy world, or whatever might call you, no matter where you might go. This is why Ru Jing too, when Dogen was going to go back to Japan, and he told him, to avoid the cities, if I recall, and yeah, and Dogen, he wasn't able to do that right away, but eventually he was able to create AAG. But yeah, it's just good to settle out a bit. Katagiri Roshi, he'd often say, if you start getting worked up about something, he'd say, pat your head, settle down, So always forgive yourself and forgive others as well. You can learn to forgive others if you can learn to forgive yourself. We all mess up, and I've been at this now way too long to have any excuses for messing up. Still, I mess up, and when I do, I try not to beat myself up. I'm pretty good about that. I used to beat myself up horribly internally in my mind. I generally don't go so far with that anymore, but it's still there, and I don't think we can ever think that we get to that. It's like that 1,000-mile journey when we tied our boat to the stake, but it isn't all going to be at the end of this road here. There's no end to this road. But it's just a matter of walking it, and we can begin to walk it with more ease and with more skill over time if we just stay with it. So I don't know if that helped, Nico.
It did. That was a very helpful answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Yes.
And I just want to thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed this morning, and I just appreciate your clarity and honesty. It has really been very helpful. So,
Well, thank you, Norma.
And Norma, I should mention, Norma is a student of Thich Nhat Hanh, and I think you've studied with Thich Nhat Hanh.
I did, yes. Yeah, over in Plum Village there, yeah. That was back in the earliest days. It was just getting started, and was able to actually spend time with him every day. Whereas in later years, I guess that became kind of impossible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had one-on-one time with him. We'd go on the walks and things, and yeah, it was great.
Your essence feels a lot like him.
Oh, Well, thank
I
you.
think a lot of Katagiri Roshi's students have studied with Thich Nhat Hanh
Mhm.
Uh-huh, yeah,
at the Plum Village.
yeah.
And Katagiri Roshi himself told me to study with Thich Nhat Hanh.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
They had the
Well-
same vibe.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, they were here. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh was here, do you remember?
I
And,
was at Tassajara at that time, yeah.
oh, you were at Tassajara,
He
okay.
was at Tassajara and then he went to Minnesota, so I.
Oh, I see, yeah. Yeah, and I remember in those days, the IDS tower, that doesn't mean anything to the rest of you, but at that time, it was the tallest building in Minneapolis and over 50 floors or whatever. So they had a lookout place on the top, marble floors, I think it was, and that sort of thing. We brought Thich Nhat Hanh up there, and he was walking around with wooden shoes on, didn't make a sound on hard marble floors. It was amazing. It's just, you know, the way he walked, because he walked slowly but very mindfully, obviously. It was just amazing. So I was very impressed. So a year later, when I was in Japan, when I left Japan, I wrote to him and to see if it was possible to see him in France. And yeah, so he invited me there. I went, but that was the following year after that. But anyway, but a very lovely man, very, very good teacher. And he's, you know, so I think those of us who have met him and talked about it, or even just, studied with him a bit. Yeah, he really opens up he makes a very broad opening, I think, for people to get on the path. And that's very valuable. I wish I could do that, but I think I just have a narrow spot. But I do welcome anybody in. But anyway, but he's a great teacher.
Should we wind it up?
Yeah, I that's probably it. So, but it was good to see you all. And
Thank you so much, Steve. This has been
yeah,
great.
my pleasure. I was happy to meet with you. Thank you.
And Anne, could you stay on, and Yuge and Genjo? Thank you.